Anya Petrova gripped the controls of her A-10. The familiar shudder of the twin General Electric TF-34 engines a comforting rumble against the rising panic in her headset. Below, the muddy brown ribbon of the Khorasan River snaked through a landscape, scarred by recent fighting. Smoke billowed from the tree line, acrid and thick, obscuring the scene of the ambush. Fury actual to any SEAL element, report your status. Her voice, usually a calm and steady presence on the radio, held a sharp edge of urgency. Static hissed back, followed by a broken transmission. Pinned down. Heavy fire. Need immediate extraction. The voice was barely audible, laced with pain and desperation. Anya's blood ran cold. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. A simple intel gathering mission for a small SEAL team had gone catastrophically wrong. Intel had indicated light resistance in the area, a gross miscalculation that had cost American lives. Back at Bagram Airfield, in the dimly lit Combat Operations Center, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Faces were grim as they monitored the fragmented reports coming in. Lieutenant Colonel Davies, Anya's immediate superior, a man known for his cautious and by-the-book approach, leaned over the shoulder of the comms officer. Get me a visual. What are they up against? The grainy satellite imagery that flickered onto the main screen offered a partial answer, and it was far worse than anyone had anticipated. A well-entrenched enemy force, armed with heavy machine guns and possibly mortars, had the SEALs cornered against the riverbank. Their only potential escape route was a heavily fortified concrete bridge spanning the Khorasan, but it was likely crawling with enemy soldiers. Davies sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. Ground extraction is impossible. We don't have any units close enough, and any attempt would be a suicide mission. He glanced towards a smaller monitor displaying Anya's aircraft icon. Petrova is the only asset we have in the area with the firepower to make a difference. But that bridge. He trailed off, shaking his head. Taking out a structure like that, it's not what the A-10 was designed for. And Fury, well, she's a good pilot, damn good even, but this is a whole different ballgame. A subtle condescension colored his tone, a familiar undercurrent Anya had faced throughout her career. A woman flying a ground attack aircraft was still seen by some as an anomaly, her skills often doubted until proven, and sometimes even after Anya heard the muttered reservations in the background chatter over the secure comms. She knew what they were thinking. A woman, even one with her combat record, tackling a target that conventional wisdom deemed beyond her aircraft's capabilities. The A-10, affectionately nicknamed the Warthog for its aggressive appearance and formidable 30mm GAU-8 Avenger cannon, was designed for destroying tanks and providing close air support to ground troops. Taking down a reinforced concrete bridge was a task usually reserved for heavier bombers and precision-guided munitions. But there was no time for waiting, no other option. Those SEALs were running out of time. Command. Anya's voice cut through the skepticism, firm and resolute. I have eyes on the bridge. Requesting authorization for a strike. A long silence stretched across the airwaves. Davies hesitated. Fury, stand by. We need to assess. Assessment time is time those men don't have, sir, Anya countered, her voice hardening. They're taking heavy fire. The bridge is their only way out. If it's intact, it's a death trap. If it's not. She left the implication hanging in the air. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was the only chance they had. Back in the COC, a heated discussion was taking place. Some officers echoed Davis' concerns, citing the risk to Anya and the unlikelihood of success. Others, listening to the increasingly frantic calls from the trap SEALs, argued for immediate action. Finally, the commanding general's voice boomed over the speaker. Davies, authorize the strike. Petrova is our only option. Give her what she needs. Davies sighed again, the weight of the decision heavy on his shoulders. He keyed his microphone. Fury, this is command. You are authorized to engage the bridge. Use extreme caution. Report your status frequently. Roger that, command. Anya replied, a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. She banked the Warthog hard, the G-forces pressing her into her seat. The bridge loomed ahead, a grey scar across the landscape, stubbornly resisting the punishment of previous, less precise attacks. She could see enemy figures scurrying across its span, preparing for a potential assault. They clearly believed their position was impregnable. They were about to learn otherwise. Anya adjusted her targeting systems, the familiar green reticle locking onto the bridge's central support pillars. Conventional explosives might chip away at the reinforced concrete, but she needed to create a catastrophic structural failure. Her mind raced, calculating angles, penetration depths, and the sheer destructive power of her GAU-8. It wasn't designed for this, but that didn't mean it couldn't be done. She selected a strafing run, lining up the Warthog for a direct approach. The airframe vibrated violently as the Avenger cannon spun up to its blistering rate of fire, 3,900 rounds per minute. The distinctive B-A sound, the calling card of the Warthog, echoed across the valley. Armor-piercing, depleted uranium. Rounds ripped through the air, impacting the bridge with brutal force. Chunks of concrete exploded outwards, and the enemy soldiers scattered in panic. But the bridge held. It had absorbed the initial barrage, the thick concrete and steel mesh proving stubbornly resilient. Anya pulled up sharply, the roar of her engines filling the cockpit. That had been a warning shot, a way to soften the target and gauge its weaknesses. She needed a more precise, more devastating attack. She circled back, her eyes scanning the bridge for a vulnerable point. The central pillars were heavily reinforced. The road deck itself was thick. But near the southern approach, she spotted a section where a previous strike had weakened the structure, exposing some of the internal supports. It was a small target, requiring pinpoint accuracy, but it was her only chance. Taking a deep breath, Anya lined up for another run. This time, she would hold her fire longer, ensuring every round counted. The enemy was firing back now, tracers arcing through the sky, but the Warthog was heavily armored, built to withstand just this kind of punishment. She ignored the jolts and thumps as rounds impacted her airframe, her focus solely on the crosshairs dancing over her target. Fury engaging target, she reported calmly, her voice betraying none of the immense pressure she was under. She squeezed the trigger, and the Avenger roared again, a sustained burst of controlled fury. The rounds walked across the weakened section of the bridge, tearing into the compromised concrete and steel. Dust and debris billowed upwards, obscuring the target. Anya pulled away, banking steeply to avoid any potential explosions. She held her breath, waiting for the inevitable. For a moment, there was only the sound of her own breathing and the thrum of the engines. Then, a deep, guttural groan echoed. Across the valley, the center of the bridge sagged, cracked spider webbing across its surface. With a deafening roar, the weakened section gave way, collapsing into the churning waters of the Khorasan. The bridge was broken. A wave of relief washed over Anya. "Bridge is down," she reported, her voice thick with emotion. "SEALs, can you confirm?" A moment later, a weak but clear voice crackled over the radio. "Fury Actual, this is Hammer 1. Bridge is gone. You saved our lives. Thank you." Anya felt a surge of pride mixed with exhaustion. They were alive. But their ordeal wasn't over. They were still trapped on the wrong side of the river, albeit with the enemy's ability to reinforce their position severely hampered. "Hammer 1, stay put. I'll provide cover until extraction assets arrive." As Anya began circling the area, scanning for any remaining threats, a new message flashed on her display. It was from command, and the single word sent a fresh wave of unease through her. Reinforcements. Enemy reinforcements were on their way, and they would be heavily armed. The SEALs were safe from immediate pursuit across the broken bridge, but they were still in a kill zone. And Anya, with her depleted ammunition and the need to protect the stranded team, knew her work was far from over. How long could one A-10 hold off a determined enemy force? If you believe in the courage of those who stand in the face of overwhelming odds, share this story and let others know what true heroism looks like. The dust plumes on the horizon grew larger, resolving themselves into the silhouettes of armored vehicles, BMPs and troop carriers, bristling with weaponry. Anya's internal threat assessment system screamed red. These weren't just scattered insurgents. This was a coordinated response, and it was significant. Her remaining ammunition stores flashed on her display, significantly reduced after the bridge strike. She had enough rounds for maybe one, maybe two more good bursts from the Avenger, and a handful of Maverick air-to-ground missiles. "Hammer 1, this is Fury. Be advised, multiple enemy vehicles inbound. Estimated time of arrival 5 mics. Take cover and conserve your ammunition." "Roger that, Fury," came the reply from the SEAL team leader, Chief Petty Officer Miller. His voice, though tired, held a note of grim determination. "We'll hold our position. Just keep those bad guys off our backs. Easy for him to say, Anya thought grimly. He wasn't facing down an armored column with a rapidly dwindling supply of tank-killing rounds. She scanned the terrain, looking for any natural cover the SEALs could exploit, any way she could use the landscape to her advantage. The riverbank offered some concealment, but they were still dangerously exposed. Back at Bagram, the mood in the COC had shifted from cautious relief to renewed anxiety. They were tracking the enemy reinforcements on satellite imagery, their numbers far exceeding initial estimates. Fury, what's your ordnance status? Davis' voice was tight with concern. Low, sir, Anya reported, keeping her tone professional despite the knot of worry in her stomach. Used a significant portion on the bridge. Have a limited number of 30 Mike rounds and a few Mavericks remaining. A collective groan went up in the COC. Damn it, Davies muttered. We've scrambled a QRF, quick reaction force, but they're at least 40 minutes out. 40 minutes. An eternity in a firefight. Fury, can you hold them off until the QRF arrives? The general's voice asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. Anya considered her options. A direct attack on the armored column with her remaining cannon rounds would be like swatting at hornets with a fly swatter. She needed to be strategic, to use her remaining firepower to maximum effect, to buy the SEALs time. Negative, sir. Anya replied honestly. A direct confrontation is unsustainable. I will attempt to interdict their advance and disrupt their formations, but I cannot guarantee I can stop them entirely. Understood. Fury. Do what you can. We are praying for you and those men. Prayer wasn't part of Anya Petrova's usual repertoire. Planning, precision, and controlled aggression were her tools. But right now, she'd take any advantage she could get. She turned her attention back to the approaching enemy column. They were moving fast, confident in their numbers, likely assuming the destruction of the bridge had eliminated any significant threat. They were in for a rude awakening. Anya climbed to a higher altitude, positioning the Warthog for a diving attack. She selected one of her remaining AGM-65 Maverick missiles, its infrared seeker locking onto the heat signature of the lead BMP. This missile had a powerful warhead, designed to punch through armor. One well-placed shot could disrupt their advance. And sow chaos in their ranks, she plunged towards the enemy column, the roar of her engines a defiant scream. The lead BMP grew larger in her targeting display. She waited until she had a solid lock, then unleashed the Maverick. The missile shot away from her wing, a white streak against the dusty landscape, and slammed into the BMP with a blinding flash. And a satisfying explosion. The vehicle erupted in flames, blocking the road and sending the following vehicle scrambling. One down, Anya reported, pulling up sharply to avoid the debris, disrupting their advance. But the enemy was undeterred. The remaining vehicles began maneuvering around the burning wreckage, their heavy machine guns spitting fire in her direction. Anya jinked violently, the Warthog responding instantly to her commands. She could hear the thud of rounds impacting. Her armor, but the A-10 was built to take a beating. She made another pass, using her remaining cannon fire to suppress the enemy infantry that were beginning to dismount. Short, controlled bursts raked their positions, forcing them to take cover. Every round counted now. She couldn't afford to waste a single bullet. The enemy vehicles continued their advance, albeit at a slower pace. Anya knew she couldn't destroy them all with her limited ordnance. Her new tactic was one of harassment and disruption. She made repeated low passes, forcing them to take cover, slowing their progress, and keeping their attention focused on the airtime stretched on, each minute feeling like an eternity. Anya kept a constant watch on the SEALs below, making sure they weren't being overrun. They were holding their own, their disciplined fire keeping the enemy at bay. But she could see the strain on their faces, the weariness in their movements. They needed help, and they needed it soon. Then, a new threat emerged. 2 enemy attack helicopters, Mi-24 Hind gunships, appeared on the horizon, their distinctive silhouettes unmistakable. These were heavily armed and armored aircraft, a serious threat to both Anya and the trap SEALs. Fury, be advised, 2 hostile helicopters inbound, warned the AWACS controller in her headset. They are armed. Anya's heart sank. This was a major escalation. She had no air-to-air missiles left. Her only defense against these heavily armed gunships was a 30mm cannon, and that was a risky proposition. The hinds were faster and more maneuverable than she was. She knew she couldn't engage them directly. Her priority was protecting the SEALs. She needed to draw the helicopters away from their position, to buy them more time for the QRF to arrive. Hammer. 1. This is Fury, she transmitted urgently. 2 hostile helicopters are approaching. I'm going to draw them away from your position. Stay low and keep your heads down. Roger that, Fury. Good luck. Miller's voice was filled with concern. Anya turned the Warthog towards the approaching hinds, putting herself directly in their path. It was a dangerous gamble, a move that went against all conventional combat doctrine. But desperation called for unconventional measures. She had to make them focus on her, to divert their attention from the vulnerable SEALs. As the helicopters closed in, their rocket pods and gun turrets clearly visible, Anya felt a surge of grim determination. She might be outgunned, but she wasn't outfought. She had one last trick up her sleeve, a maneuver she had practiced countless times but never used in actual combat. It was risky, it was audacious, and it might just be crazy enough to work. She waited until the last possible moment, until the lead hind opened fire, launching a salvo of rockets in her direction. Then, with split-second timing, Anya slammed the Warthog into a steep dive, pulling every ounce of performance out of the aging aircraft. The rocket screamed past her wings as she plunged towards the ground, using the terrain as cover. The hinds, unable to match her tight turn at low altitude, overshot her position. Anya leveled off just above the ground, the wind buffeting her wings, and disappeared into a narrow canyon. The hinds, momentarily confused, banked hard to follow. Anya had lured them into a trap, a confined space where their maneuverability advantage was negated. Now, it was her turn to strike back. But how could she possibly take down 2 heavily armored gunships with only a handful of cannon rounds? If you're on the edge of your seat wondering how Fury will escape this deadly encounter, hit that subscribe button for more incredible stories of courage and survival. The walls of the canyon blurred past Anya's canopy, the Warthog skimming mere feet above the rocky ground. The 2 Mi-24 hinds were hot on her tail, their powerful engines echoing off the canyon walls. She could see their gun turrets tracking. Her movements, the glint of sunlight on their missile rails, a deadly threat. Anya knew a direct dogfight against these maneuverable helicopters in this confined space was suicide. She needed to exploit the terrain, to turn the canyon itself into a weapon. She remembered a training exercise years ago, a low-altitude navigation drill through a similar landscape, where her instructor, a grizzled veteran of countless combat missions, had taught her a risky but potentially life-saving maneuver. He had called it the canyon corkscrew. It required nerves of steel, precise timing, and a complete disregard for the aircraft's safety margins. The idea was to use the tight confines of the canyon to force an overshoot, to make the pursuing aircraft lose their positional advantage. It was a high-risk, high-reward gamble. Taking a deep breath, Anya initiated the maneuver. She yanked the control stick hard to the left, pulling the Warthog into a near-vertical climb, using the canyon wall as a temporary support. The G-forces slammed her into her seat, her vision momentarily graying. Just as she felt the aircraft begin to stall, she slammed the rudder pedal to the right, initiating a violent snap roll. The Warthog twisted and turned, defying gravity, the roar of its engines echoing wildly off the canyon walls. It was a chaotic, disorienting maneuver, designed to throw off her pursuers. She glanced in her rearview mirror and saw the lead hind struggling to follow her abrupt change in direction, momentarily losing its lock. The second hind, however, was flown by a more experienced pilot. It anticipated her move, holding its line and closing the distance. Anya could see the muzzle flash of its 23mm cannon as it opened fire. Rounds ripped through the air, impacting the rocks around her. One grazed her left wing, sending a shudder through the airframe. Taking fire, she yelled into her radio, her voice strained. She leveled off, flying low again, the second hind still on her tail. The canyon was beginning to narrow, the walls rising sharply on either side. This was it. The point of no return. Anya spotted her opportunity, a sharp bend in the canyon, with a high, overhanging rock formation on the outside. It was a blind turn, and any mistake would send her crashing into the cliff face. But it was her only chance to shake her pursuer. She pushed the throttle to full power, the Warthog accelerating rapidly. As she approached the bend, she banked hard to the left, hugging the inside of the turn, keeping her altitude low. She knew the hind on her tail wouldn't be able to make the same tight turn at that speed. It would either have to overshoot or risk crashing into the overhanging rocks. She held her breath, waiting for the inevitable. A moment later, she heard a deafening screech of tearing metal and a violent explosion. The second hind had tried to follow her through the tight turn and had clipped its rotor blades on the overhanging rock. The helicopter spiraled out of control, crashing in a ball of fire against the canyon wall. "One down," Anya exclaimed, a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. But the first hind was still out there, and it would be even more determined. Now she climbed sharply, emerging from the narrow canyon into a wider valley. The remaining hind appeared moments later, its pilot clearly enraged. It began to maneuver for another attack run, its gun turret tracking her relentlessly. Anya knew she couldn't outrun it. She was faster in a straight line, but the hind was more agile. She had to use her remaining ammunition wisely. She had a handful of cannon rounds left and only one Maverick missile. She needed a clean shot, and against a maneuvering helicopter. That was a difficult prospect. Then, an idea sparked in her mind, a desperate, audacious plan. It was a move so risky, so unconventional, that it just might catch the enemy pilot off guard. She turned to face the approaching hind head-on, flying directly towards it. The enemy helicopter pilot likely expected her to turn away, to try and evade him. Instead, she was charging straight at him. Like a wounded animal lashing out in defiance, as the two aircraft hurtled towards each other, Anya selected her last Maverick missile. The infrared seeker struggled to lock onto the approaching helicopter against the bright sky. She needed to get closer, to give the seeker a clear target. The distance between them closed rapidly. Anya could see the enemy pilot in his cockpit, his face a mask of surprise and confusion. He hesitated for a split second, unsure of her intentions. That was all the time she needed to the last possible moment. When a collision seemed inevitable, Anya fired the Maverick. The missile shot away from her wing, its infrared seeker finally locking onto the heat signature of the hind's engines simultaneously. Anya pulled the Warthog into a violent Immelman turn, a maneuver that would take her from level flight to inverted flight and then back to level flight in the opposite direction. It was a high-G maneuver, pushing her to the limits of her endurance, but it was her only chance to avoid the Maverick's blast radius and disengage from the immediate threat. She blacked out momentarily as the G-forces overwhelmed her. When her vision cleared, she was flying in the opposite direction, the smoke and flames of the exploding hind blooming in her rearview mirror. "Splash one," she reported, her voice hoarse but filled with relief. "Both hostile helicopters are down." Back at Bagram, a stunned silence filled the COC. They had watched Anya's desperate gamble on their monitors, hardly daring to breathe. Now, a wave of elation washed over them. She had done the impossible, taking down 2 attack helicopters with sheer skill and audacity while flying an aircraft not designed for air-to-air combat. "Fury, say again." Davies stammered into his microphone, unable to believe what he had just witnessed. "Confirming 2 hostile helicopters destroyed, sir," Anya replied, her body aching but her spirit soaring, but her triumph was short-lived. A new message flashed on her display. QRF ETA updated plus 15 minutes. The quick reaction force was now delayed, leaving Anya as the only protection for the stranded SEALs for another critical 15 minutes. And she had almost no ammunition left. How could she possibly continue to hold off the remaining enemy ground forces with an empty gun? If you're amazed by Anya's incredible piloting skills, give this video a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below. The silence in Anya's cockpit was deafening, broken only by the steady hum of the engines and her own ragged breathing. The satisfying thud of the Avenger cannon was gone, replaced by the hollow echo of an empty magazine. Her missile pylons were bare. She was out of bullets, out of rockets. A ground attack aircraft without ordnance was a sitting duck, a glorified observation platform. But those men on the ground were still counting on her. "Hammer 1, this is Fury," she transmitted, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm Winchester. No ordnance remaining. But I'm still overhead. Let me know if you need anything." A brief pause, then Miller's weary voice came back. "Roger that, Fury. Appreciate you sticking around. They're still probing our defenses, but we are holding." Anya scanned the battlefield below. The enemy armored vehicles had halted their advance, likely regrouping after the loss of their air support and the disruption caused by her earlier attacks. But she could see enemy infantry moving through the tree line, attempting to flank her. SEALs' position. They were persistent, and without any way to directly engage them, Anya felt a growing sense of helplessness. Back at Bagram, the delay in the QRF's arrival had sent another wave of frustration through the COC. They were tracking Anya's aircraft. Her Winchester status a stark reminder of her vulnerability. "Can't we get another aircraft to her?" someone asked, the desperation evident in their voice. Davies shook his head grimly. "Nothing closer than the QRF, and they're still 15 minutes out. Petrova is all they have." The general paced the floor, his brow furrowed in thought. "There has to be something, anything we can do." Anya knew that back at base, they were scrambling, trying to find a solution. But out here, over the dusty plains of Afghanistan, she was on her own. She looked down at the SEALs huddled on the riverbank. Their small figures a testament to their courage and resilience. She couldn't abandon them. She had to find a way to continue supporting them, even without any weapons. Then, she remembered something her flight instructor had told her years ago during survival training. "Your aircraft is more than just a weapons platform, Lieutenant. It's a tool. Use everything you have at your disposal." An idea, audacious and potentially dangerous, began to form in her mind. The A-10, for all its firepower, was also a heavily armored aircraft. It was designed to withstand significant ground fire. And it was loud, incredibly loud. "Hammer 1, this is Fury," she transmitted. "I have an unconventional plan. Stand by." She didn't wait for their response. She banked the Warthog hard, lining up for a low-level pass over the enemy infantry attempting to advance through the trees. She descended rapidly, the roar of her twin engines growing louder and louder as she approached the tree line. She throttled up to maximum power, the A-10 screaming through the air just feet above the ground. The sheer noise was deafening, a physical force that buffeted the enemy soldiers. They scattered in panic, diving for cover, momentarily ceasing their advance. Anya pulled up sharply, adrenaline pumping through her veins. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it had bought the SEAL some precious time. She repeated the maneuver, making multiple low passes, using the Warthog as a giant, roaring scarecrow. It was a dangerous game. She was an unarmed target, vulnerable to any lucky shot. But the enemy infantry, disoriented and intimidated by the repeated thunderous passes, hesitated to push forward. Back in the COC, the controllers watched in stunned silence as Anya continued her unorthodox defense. "What in God's name is she doing?" Davies exclaimed, his voice a mixture of disbelief and awe. "She's using her aircraft as a psychological weapon," another officer replied, his eyes glued to the monitor. "It's crazy, but it might just work." Anya continued her roaring passes, drawing the enemy's attention away from the SEALs, disrupting their movements, and buying precious seconds. But she knew this couldn't last forever. The enemy would eventually realize she was unarmed and renew their attack with renewed vigor. Then, she spotted something that made her heart leap. In the distance, a faint but unmistakable sound reached her ears, the whirring of helicopter rotors. The QRF was finally inbound. "Hammer 1, this is Fury," she transmitted, her voice filled with relief. "I have visual on friendly helicopters approaching from the west. ETA approximately 5 mics." A collective cheer went up from the SEALs on the ground. "Roger that, Fury. You held the line. We owe you one." Anya continued her low passes, wanting to keep the enemy pinned down until the QRF arrived. But as the friendly helicopters grew closer, the enemy ground forces seemed to realize their opportunity was slipping away. They began a desperate, all-out assault on the SEALs' position. Anya watched in horror as the intensity of the enemy fire directed at the small group on the riverbank increased dramatically. She was unarmed, helpless to intervene directly. The QRF was still minutes away. The SEALs were in danger of being overwhelmed. Then, she saw it, a small enemy truck, loaded with what appeared to be ammunition and supplies, attempting to reach the forward assault elements. It was their resupply vehicle, and it was heading straight for the most heavily engaged part of the battlefield. An idea, even more reckless than her previous maneuvers, flashed through Anya's mind. It was a long shot, a near impossible feat, but it was the only way she could think of to immediately disrupt the enemy's final push. She lined up the Warthog for another low pass, this time targeting the enemy resupply truck. She was unarmed, but her aircraft wasn't. The A-10 was built like a tank. It had a reinforced titanium bathtub around the cockpit to protect the pilot. And it was heavy, over 11,000 pounds of metal hurtling through the air. Anya aimed for a direct collision course with the truck. It was a kamikaze move, a desperate act of sacrifice. She had no idea if it would work, if her aircraft could withstand the impact, but she couldn't stand by and watch the SEALs be overrun. Hammer 1, this is Fury, she transmitted, her voice grim. I'm going in for one last pass. Target is the enemy resupply truck. Stand by for impact. She didn't wait for their reply. She pushed the throttle to full power, the Warthog hurtling towards the truck. The enemy soldiers around the vehicle looked up in stunned disbelief as the massive aircraft bore down on them. Anya braced herself for the impact, her hands gripping the controls tightly. This was it. Her final act. Would it be enough? If you're holding your breath wondering if Anya will survive this suicidal attack, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for the shocking conclusion. The impact was cataclysmic. The reinforced nose of Anya's A-10 slammed into the enemy resupply truck with a sickening crunch of metal and a violent explosion. Fuel and ammunition detonated in a fiery blossom, sending a shockwave rippling across the battlefield. Debris rained down as the Warthog, its momentum momentarily checked, careened forward, tearing through the enemy's forward positions like a bowling ball through pins. Inside the cockpit, Anya was thrown violently against her. Restraints. The world turned black for a moment. When her senses returned, the cockpit was filled with the acrid smell of burning fuel and the screech of twisted metal. Warning lights flashed frantically across her instrument panel. The impact had been brutal, but the A-10, true to its legendary toughness, had absorbed the brunt of the collision. She was alive. Dazed and bruised, but alive. Through the shattered remains of her windscreen, she could see the chaos she had wrought. The enemy's forward assault was completely disrupted. Their resupply vehicle destroyed, and their ranks thrown into disarray. For a crucial few moments, the intense enemy fire directed at the SEALs slackened. Then, the roar of helicopter rotors filled the air. The QRF had arrived. .2 UH-60 Black Hawks, guns blazing, swept over the battlefield, engaging the remaining enemy forces. The tide had turned. Fury actual, do you copy? It was Miller's voice, strained but filled with relief. What was that? Are you all right? Anya coughed, her throat raw. Hammer 1, this is Fury, she managed to reply, her voice weak but steady. I improvised. The Black Hawks continued their attack, their door gunners laying down a heavy barrage of fire. The remaining enemy soldiers, their morale broken by the sudden arrival of the QRF and Anya's suicidal attack, began to retreat. Within minutes, the battlefield fell silent, save for the whirring of the helicopters and the crackle of the radio. The SEALs were safe. One of the Black Hawks landed near the SEALs' position, and the QRF team rushed out to secure the area and provide medical aid. The other Black Hawk circled Anya's crippled A-10, which had come to rest in a mangled heap amidst the wreckage of the enemy truck. Fury, can you egress your aircraft? A voice from the circling helicopter asked. Anya tried to move, but a sharp pain shot through her leg. She was trapped. Negative, she replied. Possible leg injury. Cockpit is compromised. We are coming down to get you, the voice assured her. Moments later, the second Black Hawk landed nearby, and 2 parascumen rushed towards her aircraft. They carefully extracted her from the mangled cockpit, securing her onto a stretcher. As they carried her towards the helicopter, Anya looked back at the scene of the battle. The broken bridge, the burning wreckage, the SEALs being tended to by the QRF. It was over. They had survived. Back at Bagram, the news of Anya's actions spread like wildfire. What had begun as a mission gone wrong had been turned into a stunning victory by the bravery and sheer audacity of one pilot. The initial doubts and condescension she had faced throughout her career were replaced by a profound respect and admiration. A few days later, as Anya recovered in the base hospital, Lieutenant Colonel Davies walked into her room. He looked different, his usual cautious demeanor replaced by a genuine warmth. Petrova, he said, extending his hand. What you did out there, it was unbelievable. You saved those men. Anya shook his hand, a faint smile touching her lips. They needed help, sir, she said simply. The official report is still being compiled. Davies continued, but I can tell you this, what you did was above and beyond the call of duty. That bridge, taking it down with an A-10, they said it couldn't be done. He shook his head in amazement. And then, when you were out of ordnance, That last pass, it was the bravest thing I've ever seen. Anya remained silent, the memory of those final moments still vivid in her mind. A few weeks later, a formal ceremony was held at Bagram Airfield. Lieutenant Colonel Anya Fury Petrova stood before a formation of airmen and soldiers, her legs still in a cast. The commanding general pinned a Silver Star, the nation's third highest award for valor in combat, onto her uniform. As the citation was read aloud, detailing her courageous actions and selfless sacrifice, a hush fell over the assembled troops. They had heard the stories, the unbelievable tales of the A-10 pilot who had single-handedly held off a superior enemy force and then, unarmed, had flown her aircraft into a resupply truck to save her comrades. After the ceremony, as Anya was being helped back to her quarters, Chief Petty Officer Miller approached her. He extended his hand, a grateful look in his eyes. "Lieutenant Colonel Petrova," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "On behalf of my team, thank you. You didn't just break through that bridge. You broke through everything that stood in our way." Anya smiled, the weight of the past weeks finally lifting. She had faced doubt, she had been underestimated, but in the crucible of combat, she had proven her courage and her skill. She had earned their respect, not because of her rank or her gender, but because of her actions. A.S. Miller and his team saluted her. Anya looked up at the sky, the familiar silhouette of an A-10 appearing in the distance. It was another pilot on patrol, carrying on the mission. But for those who had been there that day, the legend of Fury and her Warthog would forever be etched in their memories, a testament to the extraordinary courage that can be found in even the most unexpected places. The call sign Fury had always been fitting. Now, it resonated with a deeper, hard-earned meaning. If you were moved by Anya's incredible story of bravery and sacrifice, please share this video and help us honor the heroes who go above and beyond the call of duty.